Hello everyone, it is Jazz here, and today I am doing my December reading wrap-up. I'm kind of glad that I only completed 3 of the 5 books that I planned to read in December, because it actually ends up that I'm going to have a lot to talk about with these 3 books, because I kind of saved the discussion worthy, sort of sad books for December, because I'm a wacky, crazy person. The first book that I completed in the month of December was Go Set A Watchman by Harper Lee. This is sort of a companion novel, if you will, to Kill a Mockingbird. And it centers around, of course, Jean Louise, aka Scout. She is an adult now. She has basically been living in New York for some number of years, and she comes back from New York to visit her hometown in the South, and through her visit she discovers sort of some unpleasant revelations about the people that she grew up with. Thus she kind of has an inner conflict. I think the main reason why this book ended up being really controversial was because of advertising, because it was, I think, initially advertised as a sequel to Kill a Mockingbird, and then it kind of shocked some people with some of the revelations in this book. But in fact, this book is not a sequel to Kill a Mockingbird from what I've read. It is a early draft of what Harper Lee wrote. So she basically wrote Go Set A Watchman, or the idea of Go Set A Watchman, first, and then gave it to her editor. Her editor read it. She was like, there's a lot of potential here, but the real strong suit in here is like this flashback element when Scout is a child, and I think you should really focus on that. And so basically Harper Lee went back, focused on that, and wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. I went into reading this approaching it as an early draft of something, as opposed to reading it as a sequel. I really do think and recommend you also reading it that way. First of all, because there are 1 or 2 little continuity things that don't really go along with To Kill a Mockingbird, and also because it definitely reads like the early draft of something as opposed to like a full-on finished work. First, I'm going to kind of talk about the benefits of picking up this book. You will get some really interesting things that you don't get in To Kill a Mockingbird. If you wanted a little bit more history on certain things in the town, that is included in here. There are also some really interesting flashbacks in here. You kind of get alluded to how Dill and Jim and Scout played, but this goes into a little bit more detail on what their play was like. You learn a little bit more about how Jim and Scout's mother died, things like that. It is kind of fun to read the flashbacks just in general, even if you don't apply them to Kill a Mockingbird, just because I do think those are really the strongest suit of this book. I still highly enjoyed Harper Lee's writing style. It does make you really appreciate To Kill a Mockingbird more. It makes you kind of go, thank you, editor and Harper Lee, for like putting together To Kill a Mockingbird. All of this being said, this book has quite a few issues. A lot of exposition moments that just don't need to be there. Sometimes the flashbacks don't like fully, to me, like really coincide with what she's thinking about, so it kind of feels random, even though the flashbacks are really interesting. You're like, I don't get what this has to do with the actual overall theme. There's a lot of Jean Louise's uncle just talking like craziness, and he does have a point, but you want to scan the meandering to get to his point. I wouldn't say just Jean Louise's uncle like meanders. Like, some of this book in general just kind of meanders. Some of that meandering, some of that stuff that we don't need, some of the transitions into the flashbacks do really distract from the actual theme and idea that Harper Lee was trying to present. There are some benefits to reading this as like a point of interest. I think you'll find it really interesting in terms of comparison between To Kill a Mockingbird and this, and you will really further appreciate To Kill a Mockingbird in the way that it really expressed a very unifying theme and had a really direct sort of way of presenting itself and was very cohesive. This is not super cohesive, and if I had read this book and To Kill a Mockingbird had never existed, I think I would have given this book 3 stars. So that's what I gave it, because it's just okay. It's not really excellent, but it is an interesting read. Next book that I completed in December was In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This is a true crime novel. It is the story of the Clutter family murders. Basically what happened in this small town in Kansas in the year 1959 is that two men entered the Clutter family home and they killed the 4 people in the family that were in the home, and it's basically how the story affects everybody that was sort of involved in that situation, be the police investigators, the other people in the town, the people that committed the crime. I would say that if you are going to read one true crime novel in your lifetime, it should probably be this one. This one is put together in such an amazing way that it blows my mind. There is so much care to detail to the way that the viewpoints are expressed in this book. You can really tell that the research was really well done. And also the way Truman Capote wrote the book is very literary. It doesn't read like a nonfiction, which is kind of weird, I'm gonna admit, for the reader, because you kind of feel like you're reading fiction, but you're definitely not reading fiction. But I think that is a really interesting, cool element of the way this book is put together, because I do think that the way he wrote it really makes the way you feel about all the different people involved come across like so well. He does a really good job of showing a lot of respect for the family and the people involved, but also really expressing the background and the behavior of the people that committed the crime. So you're really seeing like a full like viewpoint of everybody involved in the situation. I will go ahead and say that if you're not somebody that is interested in true crime or criminal psychology already, this might not be the book that you want to pick up, because it is sort of heart squeezing for sure, and something that will probably stick with you as something that you've read, because it is a true story, first of all, but also because there are some really sad moments. I think the hardest to read might be like you are reading about the last day of people's lives. You are eventually reading about, you know, what actually happened to the Clutter family and what they went through. I think it's handled really responsibly, the way that the actual events were expressed, and it's not disrespectful to the people that were killed in any way. But I think if you're really, really sensitive, it might not be like your book of choice. I did listen to this in audiobook. I did really think it was a well put together audiobook for sure. I think the reader does really well at expressing all the elements of the story, and I think if you're not somebody that really can like jump into nonfiction easily, I would recommend listening to it in audiobook. While this is not a book that you enjoy in the traditional sense of the word, it is definitely a book that I think wins in terms of the way it is written for sure, and I gave this 5 stars purely for like the skill of writing in this book. And the last book that I completed in December was Shakespeare's tragedy Othello. So probably most people know what Othello is about, but I'll summarize it anyway. So Othello is about a man named Othello who is a soldier, and he is also a Moor, which usually means that someone is either Arabic or North African. Go with whichever choice you will. He's a person of color, basically. And he ends up marrying a woman named Desdemona, who is a Caucasian person. Obviously, this is already a little bit of a woohoo issue for people because of the time period. But insanity super ensues when the villain of this piece, Iago, who just hates Othello, partially because he didn't get the job promotion that he wanted, but also I think he just genuinely hates Othello, he decides to concoct this fabulous plan to make Othello think that Desdemona has been cheating on him, and insanity and epic villainy and just craziness ensues. What I did with this book is I basically listened to an audiobook version. I will actually put a picture of the version that I listened to on the screen. There are several dramatized audiobooks of Othello, but I picked the one that I picked because it did have, I think, the most clear audio, and also I do think like the things like the musical interludes and things are really kind of fun in it. I do think that Shakespeare comes off a little better when sort of acted to you, and I didn't actually get a chance to watch any film versions of this before this, so I still kind of wanted a little bit of the dramatic performance in my head while reading this, and so the audiobook element really helped. So I listened to this while reading along so that I could read some of like the additional notes on the side. As a play, it is a really fast moving Shakespeare play. I love Shakespeare so much, like I enjoy reading Shakespeare a lot, but I do feel like some plays like read a little faster than others, and this one definitely was one that read really fast. It is really action-packed and interesting and has a lot of levels that I probably didn't even get in this first read-through. It's definitely something that I'm going to have to read again or watch more or really study, because I think there is like even more in this than, you know, I initially got in the read. But what I read was really exciting and really interesting, and I really loved how smart all the characters were, even when they weren't thinking straight, because obviously Othello wasn't. This was the first time that I read a Shakespeare play in the Barnes & Noble edition, so I wanted to kind of talk about what I thought of these editions. I think they're pretty good. The font size is really excellent and easy to read. It does a nice job of notes, so what it basically does is it does hear unfamiliar words. So if it's like a word that we just don't use in modern English, it is kind of listed here. And on the side, it does notes on clarifying some of the dialogue or clarifying certain elements of the time period. Most Shakespeare editions do have like things on introducing Shakespeare, what Shakespeare's England was like what the time period was like, so you can kind of get the context. This one includes both those, but it also includes a little bit on understanding Shakespeare's language. I have to admit, didn't really read that stuff because I've been reading Shakespeare for a long time, so I kind of skipped over that, but that stuff is in there. It also includes some other things that you can watch or read about this particular play, which I think I will go back and read. I didn't really read that much either, but that does sort of intrigue me. I did scan it. I do prefer these Cliff's complete editions for reading Shakespeare. The only reason for that is for each kind of scene and act, they discuss the situations in it. These are like my preferred reading for Shakespeare, but I have to say, if I was on like shorthand and I just needed to pick up the play, I would definitely pick up these Barnes & Noble's edition as a second choice, because I do think they have what you need to like understand the play. I really enjoyed the play Othello itself. I do highly recommend it as a reading one. I think it's a pretty easily understood one, so if you're looking for a tragedy to kind of jump into, this might be a good one to try, and I gave this 5 stars. That was my December reading wrap-up. I'm going to try for a little bit here to split up my wrap-ups and my TBRs, so I'm going to make a separate TBR video because I just noticed that my wrap-ups were getting kind of long, so we're going to try that from now on and see how that works. Hope you guys enjoyed my reviews of these books and all my discussion elements. If there's anything about these books you would also like to discuss, please leave that stuff in the comments, because they are discussion worthy type books. And I have also left the links to all these books in the description, so if you want to check them out, you can definitely check them out. And that is it for today, my fabulous peeps. I will see you all later. Bye!